Hello, everybody. Welcome to Raising Vibrations with myself, Simon. Today, I'm going to be sharing with you a video series that I feel really connected to. And this is something I compiled to create a couple of things within our lives. For instance, at the moment, in terms of what you can, coin a spiritual awakening, we have become aware of our more sort of multidimensional self, okay? So as I'm tapping into this multidimensional self-expression and awareness that has starting to emerge for us on the planet, I've come to realize a couple of really, really powerful things that not only have been taught to me through my own teachings from an evolutionary astrology perspective, but also in terms of what can actually give a very, very specific and yet at the same time impactful lens to make sense of the incarnation that we as human beings have had on this earth, okay? Now, quite a big thing to talk about at this stage is got to do with this process between people that are awake and people that are sleeping. Okay, and how we have for quite some time been living in a period of illusion, okay, as it were. And that illusion in itself can be an expression of being separate, okay? And so therefore victimization can grow from that experience, amongst other things, okay? So just as an example, to really highlight what it is that I'm talking about here in this conversation and why I feel inspired to actually share this with you in the way that I am. So as I've been exploring these things and understanding this type of stuff, I've required a need to find a sense of balance and a sense of centeredness within myself regarding what is it all about. And as I've moved through this kind of journey within myself, I recognized that not only in my own personal astrology chart, which I will be sharing with you in this video because I'm going to show you how I work as an evolutionary astrologer, but how I came to understand my own cosmic separation, how I'm beginning that journey back home, and how what I'm actually doing in terms of my professional career is that process of recognizing the separation and then returning back home. And the main intention for that is to obviously not only heal myself, but to in some way, shape or form, show you how you can heal yourself as well. Therefore, creating this very sort of solidified expression and understanding of making sense of why you incarnated on this earth. So a major point here is, why did you incarnate? What have you come to understand about the nature of your incarnation? And again, finally, putting it out there and going, this is what you could actually do to heal yourself. And I feel like that's a very profound space to be in, or a type of lens to use to understand your life. And I think that as we move along Earth's timeline in terms of our own personal incarnation, we'll take the current astrological transits and alignments to a far greater effect, because we'll be understanding a more deeper aspect of what they could possibly hold and represent for us. Okay, so I think it's pretty amazing. I really do think that there's something here for us to all take from it, and I sincerely hope that you're able to actually connect to what it is that I'm sharing in a way that not only inspires you, but also allows you to recognize maybe the importance of this information and this perspective. Okay. So what do I mean when I talk about the cosmic separation and our journey back home? So if I just click on the slide button over here, there we go, fantastic. So what I mean when I'm talking about this is the nature of our birthing process. And the reason, the answer or the question that we pose ourselves, why? Why this life? Why this incarnation? Why my birth? And so on and so forth. And for me, as somebody that's really wanting to understand the nature of these questions from a more philosophical perspective, and maybe for a deeper spiritual healing perspective, etc., I can, in some way, shape, or form, find a sense of solace in this question, or this curiosity, this picking up the undercurrent of not the undercurrent, pardon me, picking up the boulder and seeing what's underneath it, as it were. So before I jump into actually using this diagram for everybody to explain it, I just want to give you a little bit of perspective on what it is that you're actually looking at. Firstly, can you see that there's 12 constellations over here? In these constellations is represented of 12 archetypes, okay? Now, from my point of view, when I see these symbols, I see archetypes that are represented in terms of the human psyche. It's kind of like a map of how we can understand ourselves. And in this map, as it were, there's like specific configurations that lead us into parts of our psyche, parts of our spiritual reality, etc., that give us more deeper awareness about the nature of this incarnation, okay, of this phenomena of reality which we experience. So for me, I use these 12 signs, or for better, the natural zodiac, i.e. beginning at Aries, ending in Pisces, and the natural flow going around like that. Now, this has nothing to do with 12 o'clock positions or nothing to do with the process of east or west or the process of southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere. It just is a circumference, a circle. And in that circle, there are natural evolutionary progressions that take place, okay? And so that's why I would use the natural zodiac as a representation of our psyche. So it's got nothing to do with astrology in the sense of like the constellations are 90 degrees long here and 12 degrees here. It's just about 12 archetypes interacting with each other, telling us how reality forms, okay? So I use this and I call it the answering wheel. It's my own personal thing. But I call it the answering wheel because every time I have a question about the nature of reality, I always come to this board and I seek to understand how things operate relative to signs interacting with other signs. Like, for instance, why is there always trauma when we experience loss? And the reason why that's the case is because Scorpio in itself correlates to commitment, and so therefore osmosis, and therefore total merging. And in Aquarius is the necessity for fracturing, i.e. to break off, to liberate. And in the natural zodiac, that's a fixed sign, that's a fixed sign. There is a natural square between the two, okay? Pardon me, they're going from there. And the square represents the tension between completely and utterly osmosed with something and lacking objectivity to being completely detached from it and seeing everything. And detachment, total detachment, means no interaction, i.e. the polarity of Scorpio, or Scorpio in itself, and yet Scorpio is total osmosis, leaving no objectivity. Now, in order for that kind of to manifest in reality, we need to recognize that when we need to let go of the osmosis, we will naturally experience a separation, okay? We will naturally experience an abandonment. We will naturally experience a sense of loss, right? And so now we have this in our psyche. Whenever somebody dies, it's a total fracturing of that ego reality that we were holding on to, that we're osmosed within. And then we experience the objectivity and the detachment from it, leaving us in a traumatized state. Not always the case, but in most circumstances when somebody dies, or something dies for that matter, we will experience that. Okay, so you understand what I'm trying to do here when I use this natural zodiac. So today, what I'm going to show you is how the natural zodiac actually reflects to us that within ourselves, we actually incarnate onto this plane of existence, okay, with a natural cosmic abandonment, a cosmic separation. We literally, as the moment we choose to separate ourselves from the source of creation, okay, creation and the source are two separate things and yet simultaneously the same. When creation itself exists, that separation will naturally cause us to feel abandoned in that process. And there will be that cosmic separation. Okay, so we have this. Incarnation then reveals to us that process. And our job as human beings from a spiritual perspective, i.e. a multidimensional perspective, is to recognize that we're actually seeking to return back to that place. It's actually that simple. And there are three ways that we can illustrate that point, which I hope to capture when we are actually doing this cosmic separation video. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is just kind of illustrate to you three symbols that are interacting here and what they represent. Aries, very simply, represents an instinctually new direction, okay? To change direction, okay? New beginnings, all right? Hold space for like a minute or like 10 seconds to understand what I mean when I say new direction. I mean taking a direction that has never been explored before and going along that road, okay? Cancer, very simply, is an archetype that facilitates our ability to nurture ourselves. And in nurturing, we create security, okay? And security comes from consistency, all right? Then we have Scorpio. And as you know, Scorpio reflects the archetype of osmosis, so holding on very, very tightly, which is why in a relationship, or should I say a marriage, the marriage of two people, Scorpio archetype of holding on. And the way that we hold on to a process is reflected in choice, okay? And then through that, desire, okay? So we have desire in Scorpio, and we have merging through that desire. So right now, you looked at the video, you clicked on the video, and you merged with this process. You are completely osmosed with this experience right now, okay? You committed to it. You made the choice. You followed your desire. So here you are. Now, as soon as this video ends, there will be another choice to either continue watching videos on YouTube or to go and do something else, right? That is Scorpio, that process of choice making relative to desire. The moment you make a choice, you are then led in a new direction, okay, relative to the prior experience that you had. So, in terms of this diagram you're revealing here, you have total commitment, you have new choice. One is an entirely new direction that's never been explored before. This is total commitment. Freedom, commitment, freedom, commitment. And it is this green line here relative to the archetype of quincunx, i.e. to not see each other, that in every single moment we are challenged with a dual desire. The one is to separate ourselves from something that it is that we were doing, and the one is to return to the process of basically love, okay? So we have one desire to separate ourselves from it and one desire to return, okay? And the way that you can actually understand that is now through the reflection of Aries square Cancer in the natural zodiac, right? There's a natural tension aspect, 90-degree aspect between these two. New direction naturally stimulates and also triggers the feeling of vulnerability. Because I've never explored something before, I've never actually experienced security in that area because my sense of empowerment or knowledge or awareness is not present with me. I don't feel comfortable. I can't pick up on instant reactions that are coming from a space of knowing. So what happens here is that you have Scorpio and Cancer reflected in the trine of it's so easy, easy, to become emotionally empowered in things that we know. And yet, it at the same time challenges our feelings of creating a new direction because of that need to feel safe. So we have new direction that creates evolution. We have the stressful aspect of new direction versus security, so consistency versus new direction. So we have a dual desire of anxiety of separation. We have the stress regarding the feelings of vulnerability. And we have the feeling of comfortability relative to feeling secure. And so what we have here is this natural tendency for us to, when challenged with new circumstances, feel reluctant or resistant to take them on all the time. For instance, if I talk to, let's take two people. I'm one of them, and I have another one of you guys sitting in front of me right now. And I'm an astrologer, and you are a chef. Now, for me, I've never actually gone to chefing school, and I can cook food, yes. However, I'm not a chef. Now, if I were to go into a job interview applying for a position as a head chef, the possibility of me getting that job is almost zero because I have literally no qualification. And of course, it's natural for a restaurant to want to hire somebody with that qualification. So in that moment, I'm instinctually experiencing disempowerment. So therefore, in that moment of new direction, I'm then interfacing with a sense of disempowerment, as I've said. So what will naturally happen is that in order for me to then become a chef, I would need to go to university or college, etc., with a chefing school, and I would go through a program, and that would take a period of time. And I would eventually actually then, through the new direction, based on challenging my vulnerabilities and feelings of disempowerment, grow, evolve. Because now I can actually go and apply for a job, and the potential for me to actually experience getting that job relative to the desire will be higher because I have now that education. I am empowered. And this is the fundamental archetype of evolution. And this is the building blocks of what evolutionary astrology is about. We have come to evolve through challenging our limitations relative to our feelings of unconscious emotional security patterns that we bring with us relative to past lives. And we know that this is the case because we have these unconscious patterns that are osmosed into us when we are younger, when we are growing up, because we don't have a choice when it comes to our culture. We don't have a choice when it comes to our parents. Ironically, we actually chose them because they hold the energetic vibration that assimilates our karma. You see how there is always a paradox here, and in the center is the PowerPoint. Literally, the PowerPoint. So in that example that I illustrated to you right now, I can then polarize it and go, okay, now I'm situating in a situation where the other person's going, I'm an astrologer. I hold empowerment in this process because I feel comfortable doing this work. It is a place where I don't need to feel the need to evolve because I'm not being challenged in this area. Therefore, I need no separation. So the trine between Cancer and Scorpio, it teaches you that realization that when you are emotionally empowered, the chances of your separation from that process becomes very limited or none. So we have then what is called astrological transits or progressions or life circumstances that will challenge your basis of knowing and security. And then that process, your response to that situation will dictate whether you are resistant to your evolution or you are looking for the evolution. And this can actually be perceived through the lunar nodes, the south and north node. Okay, so cosmic abandonment and cosmic separation. What does that got to do with it? Well, it's this archetype in itself, these symbols and this diagram over here, that is reflecting that when we incarnate from a more higher, like a more timelessness perspective, in other words, when we get born, we are separating ourselves from cosmic love, okay? The choice to experience ourselves as individual. So the way that we can objectify that is simply through the fact that every single one of us has a belly button. And in every single one of us, we know that that belly button was created because of the cutting of the umbilical cord, which connected us to the mother. And if you analyze it very clearly, you can notice that that process, very simply, of being birthed into this world, relative to coming into the world going, I have zero reason why, I don't understand why I'm here, because you're a baby. You're literally incarnated into the most densest form, i.e. the human condition, in that sense. And so therefore will naturally feel cosmically abandoned and separate, because it's instinctual that you've just been separated from something that is totally encompassing you through the womb, Cancer, and you've separated, Cancer, separation from the womb. So this choice that you have relative to the desire to deal with and heal your unconscious emotional stuff that's in Scorpio leads to a choice to incarnate that stimulates the anxiety of separation and the feelings of vulnerability and the need to create security through the separation from the womb, from the mother. And it is our choice to return back to that sense of love, i.e. Pisces love, separation, into Aries separation. So we basically come from here, incarnate into there, and we go around the whole entire process until we eventually go back into the same space that we were, i.e. our death. And what is the purpose of that? Well, the purpose is to go from the incarnation downwards into the physical, to then return going up the spine, i.e. up the process of the chakras, i.e. up the emotional line, back to the place in which we return, which we were beginning from. Okay? And that is the cosmic separation, cosmic love story. We're all returning back to the original point that we initially separated from. And our journey, our life, is that story. Each and every single one of us carries an energetic blueprint represented through the astrology chart of how we can understand that story. So cosmic separation is the incarnation into the physical that then allows you to feel completely separate and abandoned from the cosmic love, and then consistently needing to return back to the mother's womb, which you can't obviously do once you've born. So you naturally go to the mother's chest. And it is that process cyclically that we consistently look for in every single moment of our reality. So for instance, every single day you go to work, you come back home. You feel loved and secure and nurtured in your home. So it's that process of going out the womb, coming back into it, coming out the womb, coming back into it. Because nobody just like leaves home and then doesn't go back there. You always come back to a place of security at night, usually. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that even in our daily actions, you can see that we're seeking to return back to love, which is why the cosmic awakening, as it were, or whatever it is, Christ consciousness, is the realization of no separation. I.e., that when you separated from yourself, it was to journey back to the source of love, but you never actually separated completely, because the ocean is representative of the totality of it. When you take a rock, for instance, and you drop it into the ocean, or into the ocean, what happens here is that there are, relative to that, the weight of that rock, it hits the water and creates droplets. The droplets themselves separate from the mass, and yet simultaneously the water that is the droplet is still the same as the ocean, which means that everything is the same and yet different, i.e. that you are cosmic awareness, cosmic etc., the universe, and when you chose to incarnate, you separated yourself to experience creation, but you have to remember that you didn't actually separate from creation itself, from love itself. It's just that you forgot about it on the way down, because the denser the experience, the less light there is. So we have soul fragmentation, traumas, etc., etc. And so what I do as an evolutionary astrologer is accessing these dimensions within ourselves and then allowing us to then, through therapy, work with aspects that need to be more integrated by becoming more clearer on why you chose to incarnate in the first place. And that is the basis of EA, at least from Jeffrey Wolf Green's perspective, and evolutionary astrology in its general, is to use it as a tool to heal yourself relative to the desired need to actually return back to love, which is, why did I incarnate in the first place? Oh, because of this. Neo in the Matrix, number 2, has a conversation with the Oracle. And she's sitting on a park bench and he's trying to understand his incarnation. And she says to him, but Neo, you've already made the choice, i.e. you're incarnated. Now you've come to find out why. And that becomes the story of cosmic separation relative to the return to God, i.e. return to love. The picture illustrates it so beautifully in terms of the nature of our actual soul's journey and what we're trying to accomplish in our actual spiritual quest, as it were. And that is to find the connection back to God and, find the connection back to the source of creation, which is essentially ourselves. In that way. And so it's that unity, it's that love, it's that the seeking back to return. And this picture illustrates it so beautifully in terms of the connection that we incarnate into this plane and then in some way, shape or form forget about that or lose contact with that experience. And then through that loss of that contact, we then become aware of that connection back again through recognizing and realizing and remembering that basic story of disconnect. So another picture and something that I found really, really important to recognize, especially when working with evolutionary astrology as well. And this is called the essential needs formula. And what this does is it gives us a very deep way of understanding and interacting with our relationships. And it also shares with us how we actually go through our relationships and the trials and tribulations that we experience with them. And it shows us how we actually create the conflicts, how we find ourselves always in relationships experiencing, the experiences of disillusionment, the happiness and the sadness, and so on and so forth. So when you're trying to understand the dynamic of your relationship, the EA uses this formula, which is Pisces second, or should I say 12th, second, and 7th. And what happens here is that you take Pisces. Now remember, Pisces in itself reflects the archetype of separation. Now, I've spoken about Aries correlating to the actual process of separation itself, but Neptune is that illusion that we are separate. It's there where we are connected, and as we make the choice to separate ourselves, we come into Aries and we make that separation. And during that whole process, it's there where we have the illusion of separateness, where our consciousness is externalized and we forget about our own personal inner journey towards awakening ourselves. So what happens here is that with Pisces, because Pisces correlates to inspiration and correlates to love, we're seeking to project the ultimate meaning into the relationship archetype. And so now we have a Libra over here, the ultimate meaning in how the relationships work. We seek to project love into the external world, and then when it doesn't come back to us, we feel completely abandoned by the process. Okay? So here, it's what teaches us, and this is called an inconjunct, 150-degree angle, adjustment angle. When we do experience or express that sort of love energy, as it were, or seeking for love, and it gets basically removed from us, we experience that loss, that disillusionment. And I know in my own personal existence, which we all do have, you've got to look at the sign that rules your 12th house in your astrology chart, okay? And then you've got to look at the planetary ruler of that 12th house. So if you've got the 12th house here, obviously, and you've got Capricorn, in my case, rules my 12th house. So therefore I look to Saturn, and Saturn's in my 10th house, Scorpio. So where I project the ultimate meaning into the outside world, the existential world, the relationship archetype, is in my case is the abandonment of the father, okay? Now, the Scorpio correlates to the loss, the abandonment, etc. And then the Saturn correlates to the karma, the crystallized ego in which I'm looking to liberate myself from in this lifetime. So what happens here is that unconsciously, I project that karma into the relationships, which then, through the information of consistently keep on doing it and experiencing the disillusionment and the victimization of not being parented myself, etc., I then recognize this angle here, which is the archetype, again, of quincunx. There's another quincunx over there. So this quincunx is 150 degree, that's 150 degree, and they both reflect adjustment angles. So when that gets reflected out in the world, the projection into the world to seek the ultimate father existentially, then the adjustment angle manifests where those needs that I seek existentially then get flipped back in on myself. So Taurus correlates to that relationship within the self, or the inner relationship to self, okay? So that inner relationship to self and the process of connecting to the love vibration, or the return to source, is what actually creates this line here, which is the 60-degree angle, which is called a sextile. Okay, so I'm going to make this super clear for you guys right now. Pisces sextiles Taurus, Pisces quincunx is Libra, Taurus quincunx is Libra. So I project the ultimate meaning into a relationship, and then through the relationship not facilitating the needs necessary for me to find the return of source from within, I then get shocked back in on myself, and then realize that the essential search for the love vibration, for the return to love, or the return to source, is actually not found existentially, but inward. So I learn to facilitate those own needs as I become aware of the disillusionment process that consistently takes place here. These are stressful aspects, the readjustments. Okay. Now, there are other aspects that help the reason as to why there's that process of self-analysis, because the Earth trine itself is involved here between Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo. Virgo is inner self-analysis. Taurus is the relationship to self, so the inner self-analysis with self, and Capricorn is that inner judgment or that nurturing process relative to the father. Okay, I'm learning to father my own inner relationship to myself through responsibility, etc. So it's a little bit more complicated than what I've shown you here, but this is the essential process, that we project the ultimate meaning, seeking love. It then comes back to us realizing that we can't find it existentially, only inwardly. That then strengthens that connection to source, because we go within to find it. So in our relationships, we unconsciously project those feelings into others. And then because we are looking for the source, we're looking for the reason as to why we are here to begin with, but we can only know that if we're seeking it within. And so as we strengthen that connection to find God within, it's then through that process do we become aware of facilitating our own needs and understanding that process. Let me just go back over here quickly. So it's through the consistent disillusionment do I become aware that I'm looking to facilitate that karma that's on my 12th house and obviously the planetary ruler. Okay. Now, I know it's a little bit scary at this stage, so I'm going to try to say this again. The sign that rules your 12th house, Mercury retrograde at the moment, the sign that rules your 12th house, the planetary ruler of that 12th house. So if it's Aquarius, then you look to Uranus. And the sign in the house will tell you specifically what you're looking at here. Okay? So again, Capricorn, in my case, was ruling my 12th, so therefore Saturn's in the 10th, so I project the need for fathering existentially. I don't get it. That forces me back in myself to realize that the source that of this need is to be facilitated internally and not externally. And so therefore realizing my karma, recognizing the choice, becoming aware more of that reasoning as to why I came here in the first place. And that is the process of ascension. That is the process of awakening to one's spiritual incarnation in that way. So these are the two formulas that are really, really important to understand in terms of connecting to not only the why, but also how we go about becoming more aware of that process. Okay, so that's for video 1. I really hope that you enjoyed this. What we'll be doing now is going over to video 2, where we'll be discussing the way back home. And I'll be sharing with you some of my insights regarding what I perceive that to be. All right, guys, have a fantastic day. Take care. Bye-bye.